Taylor,
Here.
Robinson,
Here.
Gaines,
Here.
Baggett,
Here.
Height,
Here.
and Witcher. A quorum is present, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Can I ask that we stand for the prayer and the pledge, and ask for those present, please bow your head. Dear Father, we want to thank you for the gift of your Son as he gives us guidance and direction and took such a burden on his shoulders when he died for us on the cross. May we honor that sacrifice. May we respect and believe in the word that you continue to send us. Let us ask for your guidance as we go about the deliberations of this city, and please give us your continued benevolence, your consideration, and your undying love as we deliberate the best wishes and the best guidance that we can deliberate amongst ourselves. Continue to bless us in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Second.
Motion made and seconded that the minutes of the January 26th meeting and the special call that was held in conjunction with that be approved as submitted. On the motion.
Ross,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Robinson,
Yes.
Gaines,
Yes.
Baggett,
Yes.
Height,
Yes.
and Witcher.
Yes.
We have two communications. If you'll, do I have a blanket motion?
Move accept and file 1 and 2, both of them.
Or a second?
Second.
On the motion.
On the motion, Ross,
Yes. Yes.
White,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Robinson,
Yes.
Gaines,
Yes.
Baggett,
Yes.
Height,
Yes.
and Witcher.
Yes.
Shows that we have no, well, we do have a presentation. Are we ready for a video? It shows we have a video. Chief McCall, good to see you. Mr. Boyles, if you want to come to the microphone, we've got a little bit of a presentation. Or if you want to get the video, I think, we've had, Chief, if you want to come up to the microphone, we have a video that we'd like to share. I know that for the last 8 years, how many years, Chief? 8 years, that I had the opportunity to select, one of the finest individuals I've had an opportunity to work with, Joe McCall, his wife Barbara. For those 8 years, at least, were a part of our official family in terms of the leadership that he exhibited down at the North Rock Fire Department. His leadership was also reflected in the Arkansas National Guard or Army Reserve. Army Reserve, yeah, that's correct. Not the Arkansas, the United States Army Reserves, and serving out at Camp Pike. He, as we all know, recently retired. The retirement celebration, I guess, if you'd like to say that, was taking place a week ago last Friday, if I'm not mistaken. I know I unfortunately was out of town and wasn't able to attend, but that certainly didn't lessen not only my feelings and appreciation for your time here, not only as the chief, but for another
Almost 37 years.
37 years. So 29 years as a member of our fire department before he was assumed the leadership position of chief, and then 8 years as chief of the department, and we are extremely both pleased and appreciative of that leadership. We commend to you your retirement. I know how many grandchildren now?
Got 2 grandchildren, Mayor.
And we sure understand the desire to spend more time with them and with your family, and wanted to add to the continued and large amounts of both congratulations, appreciation, and thankful community that we've had a chance to to be a part of your tenure here, as well as, you know, all of those citizens, your department heads, your colleagues that are down at the fire department. We appreciate them. But I wanted to, I know we have a video that we're going to take a look at, but wanted to ask you to come down and accept, not only my congratulations, but this council's congratulations for the time that you spent with us. Mr. Friedel's not down here, but Fritz Friedel, as you know, is the head of our Office of Volunteer Services. He's making a transition too, but we look forward to you coming down and filling out an application for volunteering, and we know that while that may or may not be on your list, the footprints that you've made around here for many years will never be erased. So, Chief, thank you again, and feel free to offer a few thoughts, and then if Mr. Voiles has done his job, or whoever's back there, will roll our video.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve as Fire Chief of North Little Rock, and the time I spent as a firefighter was truly the best job in the world. It is always fun, even though there is some danger and you get involved in some situations you wish you didn't have to, but every day is different. And you yourself, Mayor, said if you had it to do over again, you'd have stayed in the reserves and you'd have been a firefighter. So it is the best job in the world, without a doubt. And I thank the council and your support for the past 8 years as chief. And I'd like to remind you about the polar bear plunge, that all the department heads were going to plunge with you next year. And we could probably extend that to the council also.
Well, now, Chief, are you
But since I've
volunteering?
retired and somebody has to judge, I may volunteer to be a judge up there, Mayor.
So you don't think that a volunteer plunge, now that wasn't that bad. I understand, Bob Malden's looking forward to taking up the challenge, right, Chief?
That sounds like a new chief. But I truly do appreciate the council's support and the support of the citizens of North Little Rock. By far does North Little Rock have the best fire department in the state. Without a doubt, every month another department would call me or Chief Malden to try to figure out how we do stuff. And that's not just true in the fire department, it's true in every issue of the city. Very unique place to live and work, and you should be proud of North Little Rock.
We are, Chief, and we're certainly proud of the active time that you spent with us, and we look forward to continuing our relationship, certainly at a different level, but nonetheless one that we appreciate having.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, if we roll our video. Yes, sir, Chief. And let's let Chief McCall, as he leaves, let's all give him a real. Chief, thanks again.
Possibility that I could you and the city council and the chief down here?
Well, I don't know about the entire council. Why don't we just get me and the chief, and then we'll come and we'll pause for just a bit of an informality. Chief, if you want to come up here, and you and I will be down there in the council. John, if you can just. Yeah, we'll get back up here, and then we'll just see if the council members can. Squeeze in just a tad bit about that.
You may sit here while you're gone.
There we go. Two, three. All right, you bet.
Boy, he's bossy for you, isn't he? He bosses you around. Good deal, good deal.
Why don't you introduce Barbara? This is Chief's wife, Barbara. You stand up, and we thank you too. Okay, I don't, Ms. Marshall doesn't have any, one that has, well, no public hearings, and no one has signed up for any comments on any of the pending legislation. As such, Ms. Marshall, if you'd go to unfinished business.
R 0905, Mayor Hayes.
Please call it. Well, go ahead and call it.
This is a resolution approving a revised plat of lots A, B, C, D, and E of Block 42, Town of Argenta, revolving a boundary dispute. This is a resolution.
Can I get a motion?
Move for adoption.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. McQuaid, if y'all will recall, was here and wanted us to hold off until they reviewed it. Mr. Voiles told me just today that she has, and that she has no problems with us moving forward with that. So as such, Ms. Marshall, if you'd call the roll.
Ross.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Taylor.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Gaines.
Yes.
Baggett.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
Next item,
R 0910, Mayor Hayes.
please call it.
This is a resolution appointing Alderman Kerry Gaines as chairman of the North Little Rock Veterans Memorial Advisory Committee.
This is part of the same issue that we held at Ms. McQuaid's request. Same answer as was in the previous legislation. So with that, if I could get a motion.
Mayor.
Th-
Mayor.
Yeah, this will be 06, Mayor.
Okay. What?
R 0906.
Wait a minute.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you?
Read the wrong one.
Let's back up here.
Oh, yeah. You're right. It is 06.
Yes, here we go. R 0906, okay. A resolution authorized the reconveyance of 701 North Magnolia Street in the city of North Little Rock to the previous owner.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Okay. I was thinking that, and didn't even hear what what Ms. Marshall said. So with that, can I get a motion?
You got it.
Did we
You got
get a
one,
motion?
Mayor.
All right, now it got me all confused. Motion made and seconded, same answer as the one before on the motion.
Ross.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Taylor.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Gaines.
Yes.
Baggett.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
Now, R 09, wait a minute. Let me,
R 0909.
R 0909.
Please hold that.
Alderman Gaines.
Please hold that.
Next item,
0902, Mayor Hayes.
and let's hold that one more time. And now we're in new business.
On new business.
All right?
R 0910, Mayor Hayes.
I think we want that called.
A resolution appointing Alderman Kerry Gaines as chairman of the North Little Rock Veterans Memorial Advisory Committee.
Move for adoption.
Second.
On the motion.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Taylor.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Gaines.
Pass.
Baggett.
Yes.
Height. And
Yes.
Witcher.
Yes.
R 0911, Mayor Hayes.
Please call it.
A resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into an agreement with James Lee Witt Associates, a part of Global Options Incorporated, for lobbyists and consulting services.
Can I get a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Let me, Hal Honeycutt is here. Hal is with James Lee and Witt and Associates, and let me remind the old council and certainly address the new council members. Last spring, May, I believe, we issued a request for proposals. I believe James Lee Witt, and this was for general, both state and federal lobbying assistance. The response was filed by James Lee Witt and Associates. The committee, they were only the one, if I'm not mistaken, that responded. The committee met and felt like they certainly were extremely qualified and made the recommendation. I think we went about doing a variety of things in terms of moving forward to that recommendation at that time. Obviously, many of you recall that there were a number of things that went on. We also sought and received their assistance on a somewhat of an ad hoc basis, although they weren't actually hired in assisting our electric department in preparing its application for, or at least reviewing and modifying an application that we had in front of FEMA for the flood damage that occurred to our hydro plant. A tremendous amount of silt was accumulated in front of the intakes. In fact, I think the contract is going to actually start to be implemented beginning next month. They're on site, Mike, if I'm not mistaken, in setting up right now. We had originally applied and quantified about $1.1 million to $1.1 million in what we felt were qualified expenses, with the input of both expert witnesses and assistance from James Lee Witt and Associates. That was that amount was raised to about $1.8 million. We've gotten some indications. We don't have anything in writing yet, but we've gotten some pretty strong indications that we feel that amount is justifiable, and feel very strongly that that amount is likely. Now, we won't get the entire. There will be some dissipation from that based on what they think that was there prior to the flood. So we feel like somewhere in the $1.5 million range are actual dollars that we're likely to get. If you've got any questions that you want to add to that, Mr. Russ is here, the manager of our electric department. Hal, if you want to come up just in case there are any questions of you. Hal represents James Lee, Honeycutt represents James Lee Witt and Associates here in Little Rock, and does a lot of work with the state legislature. Obviously, many of you know James Lee Witt, who was the FEMA director under Clinton, served as the state's emergency services director under Clinton when he was governor here in Arkansas, and has others that are associated with his Washington firm. In addition to Ed Fry, who's the former administrative assistant of Congressman Snyder, and I know that I had a chance to work with for a number of years when he held that capacity. Rodney Slater, I believe, is affiliated with the firm, and certainly other people that we know that both have Arkansas connections as well as national and international connections. So this would give us a continued opportunity, and I might add, with the 1.8 million, there are other potential funding things that would receive funding review somewhere between the $3 and $4 million range that is currently being considered by FEMA, and to the extent that we need the assistance of James Lee Witt, that obviously this representation would in large measure be for the electric department, but in larger measure too would be for things that are happening in Washington right now. I don't think that any of us anticipated when we first started considering this, the magnitude of what is taking place literally as we speak, in terms of roughly $800 billion being allocated to the various states under the economic stimulus package. I know I was on a conference call as recently as 3 hours ago with mayors around the country and reviewing current legislation. The Senate will in all likelihood, unless things have changed, vote on its planned tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, and then the conference committee will be convened. All of them are under a very tight time frame to move this toward a final bill so that the president can sign it. Their goal is to sign it on President's Day, which is a week from today. A lot of those dollars will come directly to cities under several different formulas, some of which are better than others. We generally prefer the House version than the Senate version, but there are modifications that are being made, like I said, literally as we speak. The conference committee, will come up with a final version. Either way, whatever version that comes about, the money, the funding that the cities will get directly is certainly of some benefit, but a good bit of those dollars will go from under a categorical approach that will flow to the governors, that then will ultimately take secondary steps to to be utilized at some of their direction as well as the state legislative direction to secondly come to the cities. There are funding options that will continue to accrue through the years, through the year, even after the stimulus package. With regard to the Community Development Block Grant, I know there's $1 billion that's in the House version. I don't think there's any money in the Senate version, but in the House version there's $1 billion. And to give you an idea of what that perhaps would mean to us, the total CBDG bill right now is a little over $4 billion. So that $1 billion might very well result in a 25% increase to the cities. To each allocation, we get a little less than $1 million, so that would mean $200,000 to $300,000 in additional CBDG funding. There's somewhere in the neighborhood of I believe $2 to $2.5 billion for home funding. We receive, I think, somewhat of a like amount in terms of our home funding, so that would be a significant addition to the home funding allocation that we receive through CBDG. I say all that to say this, that if there was, and I know, you heard me comment last week on, the concern that we have with regard to our sales tax revenues being down. It is always a difficult thing for us to prioritize, but I would have to say that that if there was ever a time for us to try to move forward, with seeking a partner who has both state and federal connections, this is it, with those kinds of dollars that are both available and going to be coming in the very near future. So I am very pleased that the timing of this seems to be appropriate, that the assistance that they've already given us with regard to the FEMA funding has already resulted, we believe. Now again, this is there's not anything in writing, but I certainly wouldn't be saying this unless we had a strong belief that that we were where we are representing that we are, of somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000 worth of benefit that we've received up to this point, and we certainly would look forward to this only accelerating in terms of what we think would be a terrific partnership. As the agreement specifies, this would be for 1 year. The total amount, I believe, is $6,250 a month, or a total of $75,000. I understand one council member who I think rightly has observed that that we probably ought to take a look at the expenses, and I think we're ready for an amendment. I'm told that $2,000 for expenses. If there should be anything over that, then that would need to seek approval from our office, and I'll assure you I'd be very both informative to the council as well as inclined to keep it in that neighborhood. So if there are any questions that anyone would care to ask, feel free. Alderwoman Robinson.
Okay, I have two questions. My first question is, are there any other cities?
Little Rock is another client of James Lee Witt. As I understand, they're the only other city, Mr. Honeycutt, in Arkansas at this point. And they have had, Little Rock has been your client for at least several years now.
I think we're starting our 4th year.
Okay.
And then my second question is, if this passes tonight, will we be able to get some type of, maybe a yearly, report at the end of this contract as to what was done and...
The answer is that is absolutely. We would even, certainly be willing to give the council periodic reports. At least in the 6-month level, we'll give you an update on what all is taking place. I'm hopeful that you'll be able to see by newspaper accounts what's taking place because of us being able to announce successes or acknowledgments in terms of funding results as we hear formally from FEMA and other. This is not anything that we intend to keep under the radar screen. If anything, we intend to elevate it and wave the flags above City Hall with the results that we hope all of Central Arkansas and certainly North Little Rock achieves.
And I think in our ward, the roundabout was paid 100% federal?
STP funds, which are Highway Department funds, we have worked very hard to keep that project. As you know, we've spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $200,000 out of an allocation in order to have that, which is a new term that we're all hearing, and that's shovel-ready. You may recall a newspaper article that recently indicated that MetroPlan had elevated that. The STP funding, unless there are increases, and at this point of the money that's been allocated to transportation, 42%, I believe, has been allocated to be distributed under the STP formula. We're trying to increase that percentage to a higher amount, and if that would happen, then obviously more money would flow to the MetroPlan type of distribution system. Under the current distribution system, unless there's more money that's placed in there, it's already been acknowledged we'll receive in this Central Arkansas area around $12.5 million. Of that $12.5 million, one of the 4 projects that was listed that would be eligible for that funding would be the roundabout to the tune of $1.1 million. So we would hope that project would be under construction. Again, the one thing you continue to hear and see is that the President, as well as the Congress, wants to get this money flowing. And this project is ready for bulldozers to go to work. So, I would hope that we see work on the roundabout somewhere by the middle of the year, but that project is right at the top, of Central Arkansas's list of things that we want to see happen. Alderman Height?
I'm just curious as to some of the, how Little Rock may have benefited from your efforts in the past 4 years, and also this is separate and apart from our association with Finnegan and Associates and them trying to acquire grant funding for the city, but this is a separate program, and so I'm just kind of curious as some of the fruits of your efforts over on the other side of the river.
I don't know the exact amount, but there have been numerous earmarks that we have secured for the city of Little Rock that they would probably not have gotten without our assistance. And Ed Fries, I'd have to say he must be as good as there is in Congress to know where the money is and how to get it. He was up there 24 years with 3 congressmen in the 2nd Congressional District, and he's been with us now 2 years, and he can get in most any door he wants on Capitol Hill, and he's very well respected and
one of the things
good, honest person.
One of the things that we're hearing, excuse me, Hal, one of the things that we're hearing is that earmarks are somewhat going a bit out of disfavor. Not that they are going to be totally gone, but that another approach that certainly some of this, a lot of the stimulus money is going to be going, and that's again through the governor for redistribution, vis-a-vis different kinds of state programs that then we deal with directly. So the game is changing up there, but nevertheless, it's got to be cities where the end results are going to be both seen, felt, and jobs created. 80% of the jobs in this country are created in cities. So I think without a doubt, if I'm not mistaken, the fourth year, we're going to, we would intend to review this every year. We'd give you periodic updates, and the council would have an opportunity to extend this. It's a 12-month contract, and if we don't feel, or the council doesn't feel that the performance is not forthcoming, then, we certainly wouldn't be here asking for it to be renewed.
We'll do you better than that, Mayor. I think the contract stipulates that you can cancel us in a 30-day period, so.
And I think you're correct. Alderwoman Ross?
On this, on the Appendix C, under the rate schedule, is where I wanted to amend in the $2,000 rather
Right.
than leave that open. And I'll do that when we get through this. But also, Scott Miller had emailed me on this, on doing a report also, and I spoke with Mr. Carter on that, and he has written up an amendment for that. But basically, if we could just have a report by December the 1st.
We can do
And I
you-
know that you
we
said
can
we'll
do
be
you
doing
one
it.
monthly, quarterly, however
Okay.
you want it.
All right, I think that's
It's
just
no
what
problem.
people just wanted to know what we were
Sure.
getting, so.
Okay.
Annual's fine with
We
me.
work for you. You require it however often you want it.
Okay. Thank you.
Quarterly,
Quarterly.
if you want to put it
Quarterly.
in there quarterly, that gives us a chance to get a few things done, and then, I'm sure as we see successes, we'll be willing to toot our horn just as quick
Yeah.
as we, have a tune to play. Do you have some language? Do I have a motion? Sure. Was there a motion, Ms.?
Yes.
Okay, motion
on
made.
Witcher and Baggett.
And second, and now you got a motion to amend.
A motion to amend, yes, we'll do this one first.
And basically, these are two amendments. Would you like to consider them at the same time or separately?
Do it separate.
Same time.
Same time, sounds easy enough. At the end of Exhibit C, we just add a clause at the end of the very last sentence that says, not to exceed $2,000 per year without client's written approval. And I think that was terms that we discussed earlier. And then also at the end of Appendix B, we just put an additional paragraph that says that each quarter this agreement is effective, consultant will prepare and submit a report that is suitable for public dissemination. I know not all reports that you have are suitable for public dissemination, but we would want one that would just contain such information that the public, could see, and generally describing the services provided during the previous quarter.
I'll take that
That's
as
my
your motion to
amendment.
amend, and then there's a second. Any discussion on the motion to amend? Ms. Marshall?
Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson? Yes. Gaines? Baggett? Yes. Height?
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes, move for adoption as amended.
Is there a second
Second.
on the motion?
On the motion, Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Baggett? Yes. Height?
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Honeycutt, Mr. Ross, and, go tell Mr. Fry to get work on our first report.
He's on the boat right now working for you, Mayor.
We appreciate it. Thank you. Next item?
R 0912, Mayor Hayes.
Please call it.
This is a resolution expressing the willingness of the city of North Little Rock, Pulaski County, Arkansas, to utilize federal aid monies for installation of a traffic signal at Highway 100 in Vesta Court.
Just by way of brief explanation, we've already voted on this. We did this last year. It went over to the Highway Department, and they wanted a little extra structure put into it that has absolutely no bearing on the substance of the resolution, but they wanted it, so that's why it's being presented to you again.
It comes out of their purse, doesn't it?
It comes out of their pocket. They wanted it to conform with a different structure, so we said we aim to please.
Do I have a
That's why you're considering it.
So,
Is there a second? Second. On the motion?
Ross?
Yes.
White?
yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
Line 13, Mayor Hayes.
Please call it.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an easement agreement with Arkansas Development Finance Authority for an extension of the bicycle and pedestrian trail in the city of North Little Rock.
Move for adoption, then you want to explain where this is, so.
Is there a second?
Second.
This explanation goes for the next one, too. The Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality is next-door neighbors to the Arkansas Surgical Hospital. And as we might remember, Gene Pfeiffer has donated a lot of land to the city, for trail purposes. And what this is a connection of that trail that goes to the north end of Campbell Lake. At this point, I believe it's referred to as the Campbell Lake Trail, and it joins the Isabella Joe Trail. Mr. Pfeiffer has donated some additional land in addition to these two facilities to connect our trail system to this, we'll say, the North Shore Business Park, which I know a number of bicyclists already come up a different direction and utilize the roadways up there for recreational purposes, particularly on weekends. The county has entered into an agreement with us that essentially will split the cost of the construction of this trail. We're to provide the road bed and some of the prep work, and then they're going to come in and pave it. So the county and the city have agreed to jointly shoulder the cost of actual construction. These are two easements that simply give us the right to utilize the property between AEDQ and the Arkansas Surgical Hospital in anticipation of the construction of that segment of the trail. Once that's done, then Mr. Pfeiffer's requested that section be renamed. I believe it's the North Shore Business Park or something there akin, and to me this would be a grand addition to our trail system. That's basically the explanation of those two easements. Any further questions on the first one? On the motion?
On the motion, Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
And let's do the next one then. That's the same explanation.
RO 914, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an easement agreement with Arkansas Surgical Hospital for an extension of the bicycle and pedestrian trail in the city of North Little Rock.
Move for adoption.
Is there a second?
Second.
On the motion?
On the motion, Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
RO 915, Mayor Hayes.
Please call it.
A resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to sell a vacant lot generally located east of I-40 and south of the intersection of Jericho Road and Veronica Avenue.
Can I get a motion on that and then we'll explain it?
So move.
Second.
All right, Mr. Voyles, you want to come to the microphone? And one of the former members of this council, Bishop Donnie Lindsay's in the audience, and if there's any questions of Bishop Lindsay, we'll certainly, I'm sure he'll be more than willing to respond. It's a little interesting in terms of this piece of property and how the city came to its ownership. So, Mr. Voyles, if you would sort of go over it and help us in joining in our recommendation.
Yes, sir. Reverend Lindsay came to me and said, would the city sell us this property some distance out into the county? And we didn't know we owned the property. Apparently, Rose Ruffin had developed a small subdivision there and decided that the neighborhood ought to have a park and put it in the city's name because we do such good park work. But we didn't review it as far as I can determine, and so he's asking to build homes on this property and provide a park where there is one on the other end of this triangle, but he has a home out that way, and he's asking to acquire this,
I'll be right there.
and that's all we know about the property.
Is there any reason that we came up with the recommendation of the price?
That was his suggested price. To get an appraisal on the property, $700 is probably a low price. So we think that's a reasonable offer and not to expend city expenses any further on that property.
Now, did we know we owned it?
We did not.
And it's in the county?
Yes, it's
And
out northwest of Oak Grove area, near the freeway, and in an area where there are some suburban development.
Just out of curiosity, when did Ms. Ruffin give that to the city?
Do you know that?
She's been dead for years.
Oh,
1960.
We haven't grown that way, that fast, so.
Any questions of Mr. Voiles or certainly Bishop Lindsey? Any further discussion on the motion? Oh, I'm
Mayor,
sorry.
Yeah, we have an
Oh,
amendment.
okay.
We misspelled Bishop Lindsey's name, so the amendment changes that.
All right.
Mayor, we've had a typo. There are amendments that are distributed around, and they're
All right.
available.
Do we want to just move that the,
Adopt as amended.
you know, let me get a motion that what would it say, the legislation that was distributed, be adopted as the amendment. Is that
So moved.
moved by Alderwoman Robinson, seconded by Alderman Taylor? Any further discussion on the amendment, on the motion to amend?
On the motion to amend, Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines?
Alderman Gaines had to leave the council meeting.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes, move for adoption as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
On the motion to adopt as amended.
To adopt as amended, Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
Next item?
RO 916, Mayor, Alderman Taylor.
Please call it.
This is a resolution supporting Arkansas legislation to establish an investment tax credit for the rehabilitation and development of central business improvement districts.
Move
Is
to
there,
adopt.
assume you want to call it? Is there a motion?
So moved.
All right, motion to
Second.
adopt, is there a second?
No question.
All right, motion made and seconded. Questions?
I don't know if this is for you or for Mr. Taylor, or Alderman Taylor. Okay, when it says Central Business District Improvement, is that any certain area? Is it in a historic area? Can it be anywhere? Could this be used in Park Hill, or,
I can tell you, this is one that Alderman Taylor sent to me and said, hey, this is out there, and people are talking about setting up these central business improvement districts, and they're looking for, tax credits to resolve some of the historic issues with central business improvement districts. And this legislation posed to support that. I kind of did some background research at his prompting to find out some more about it. And that's basically what the legislation is. It allows you to set up central business improvement districts, just like, there can be other improvement districts that are set up for different purposes. Central business improvement districts are a type, and they're directed towards downtown areas that are historic in nature, that are set up to basically with the purpose of preserving those downtown areas. So that's kind of the intent of it. There's legislation that's pending.
Yeah, House Bill 1060 and Senate Bill 9.
But let me ask, let me follow up with Alderwoman Ross's question. A central improvement district, would Park Hill at least, be able to qualify? It's been a business district for a long time. I know I've spent a lot of change up there.
I don't know if it's organized under the Central Business Improvement District model, and it may be. I know Bob Harden's heavily involved in these things. I'd have to talk with some of the people who are involved with them before I could answer that question dispositively and tell you yes or no whether it's set up that way. It may be, but it may be under a different statute as well, and I'd hate for somebody to rely that it is.
Is this the one that Greg Nabholz is kind of involved in also?
Yeah.
I know that he is.
Then this is the one that the Advertising and Promotion Commission just this afternoon endorsed and recommended that its passage in both the House and the Senate.
I knew they were considering it, and the feel was that it was going to be considered favorably today, but I think they've endorsed it as well.
Any other questions or comments?
so we don't know? Okay.
With Park Hill, I can't tell you whether or not that applies. I'd have to see the way that improvement district was set up.
Okay.
On the motion?
On the motion, Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
That's all your resolution, Mayor.
Let's go to ordinances.
00902, Mayor Hayes.
Please call it.
This is an ordinance vacating and abandoning alley in Block 4 of the...
Wait a minute, where are you?
0902.
Okay,
0909, right?
0909.
0909.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was on hold. I'm sorry.
Okay,
0909. Mayor Hayes.
please call it.
An ordinance waiving formal bidding requirements for refurbishment of the shaft-driven pump on Unit 2 at the Murray Hydro Plant, appropriating funds. First reading.
Move to suspend rules, placed on second reading.
Second.
On the motion.
Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
This is an ordinance waiving formal bidding requirements for refurbishment of the shaft-driven pump on Unit 2 at the Murray Hydro Plant, appropriating funds. Second reading.
Move to suspend rules, placed on third reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
On the motion?
Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines? I'm sorry, he's not. Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
This is an ordinance waiving formal bidding requirements for refurbishment of the shaft-driven pump on Unit 2 at the Murray Hydro Plant, appropriating funds. Third and final reading.
Before I call it for a vote, Mr. Ross, are you here? Okay. Let me just briefly explain that. We had a leak, as I understand it, it's been described to me, we've had a leak in our hydraulic fluid system, or was it hydraulic? Or was it just regular lubricating?
Lube oil system.
Yeah, lube oil system, excuse me, in our lube oil system that oiled this shaft in one of our two turbines. This was, the leak occurred in a place that's not readily visible, and because of that leak and the lack of lubrication, this gearbox, we'll say, severely damaged itself. And the company and you can ask any questions the council has, this was discovered. We filed insurance claims on this. We have a $250 deductible. Excuse me? $250,000. 250,000. Did I say 200?
You said $250.
Oh, dollar. Excuse me. I wish. I'm sorry. $250,000 deductible. I wish it was $250. And so, a little less than half of this should be covered by our insurance carrier, but that deductible obviously would be uncovered. We've located a company that can come in and actually do the milling on site, if I'm not mistaken. As we I think all are aware, our hydro plant, it doesn't appear that there's anything that's really, we'll say economical, but at least we have a little less than half of this that will be covered by our insurance. With that, if any council member has any questions, Bob Reynolds or Mike Ross was available. Do I get a motion to adopt on third and final?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
And second. On the motion?
On the motion, Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
On the emergency, Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Next item,
00910, Mayor Hayes.
please call it.
An ordinance waiving formal bidding requirements for a backup generator for the North Little Rock 911 Center, appropriating funds.
Move to suspend the rules and place it on its second reading.
Second.
On the motion?
Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
An ordinance waiving formal bidding requirements for a backup generator for the North Little Rock 911 Center, appropriating funds.
Move to suspend the rules, placed on the third reading.
Second.
Second.
On the motion?
Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines? I'm sorry, he's out. Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
An ordinance waiving formal bidding requirements for a backup generator for the Little Rock 911 Center, appropriating funds. Third and final reading.
Before I call it for a vote, Mr. Ezell, are you here? Come on up to the microphone. We almost, if there had been any, well, of course, we might have a weather issue tomorrow night. We discovered that the generator that we currently have, was probably on its last leg several legs ago, and I'll let you explain, why we, are where we are, and then we'll, see how we can go forward.
Yes, sir. This generator is about 25 years old, and we have two generators at the center, and it's the main one for the 911 center. We've had extensive repairs on it, and we found out late last year that it has some major problems with its circuit board, which would have to be replaced, and some major internal engine problems, and it's 25 years old. We're in a time of the year that I'm pretty nervous about. You know about the ice storm in the northern part of the state. 2 or 3 degrees difference, and it would have been here, and we wouldn't have had that dependability. And we're turning the corner into tornado season, which is right around the corner. And so I want to have something that's very dependable, because that's the busy time for us when we have those disasters.
Motion for adoption on third and final? Go ahead.
Just one question. We waived the formal bidding. Is this because we desperately need it right now?
Yes, ma'am. We don't want to run on extension cords. We want a generator. Yes,
that's right. We want to call 911.
We want them there when we
Okay.
dial 911.
Okay.
In terms of the price, we made several inquiries on where the best
This is a
price
good
was.
price.
So it's not that we just call one person on this. Is there a motion to adopt on third and final?
So moved.
Second.
On the motion?
Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
On the emergency, Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
0911, Alderman Gaines and Baggett.
Mayor, Alderman Gaines was called out on an emergency. I'd like to hold this if we could, please, on 0911 and 0912.
I know I had a chance to visit with Alderman Gaines a bit, Alderman Baggett, and on this legislation, and I certainly obviously defer to your comments. I had gotten the impression that what he and perhaps y'all were interested in considering was to read it and then to set it up for public input, so that we could set a public hearing at the next council meeting, and if that is indeed what y'all's potential approach is, then I would certainly be very willing to ask Ms. Marshall to read it and then set it for a public hearing at the next council meeting.
Great.
I know that's what he had indicated to me, and if that's your understanding, then maybe we can move this on with that approach, because I know at least when I talked to him, he'd indicated that he wanted to at least have one public hearing and maybe more in terms of what this is. So if that's okay with you, Alderman,
He did,
that way maybe we
he
can.
wanted to have a
Public
public
hearing.
hearing on it. Yes, sir.
Well, Ms. Marshall, with Alderman Baggett's concurrence, and if you would read that.
This is an ordinance amending ordinance number 7697, the zoning ordinance regarding electronic changeable copy signs. First reading.
And what I understand that is, so everyone could be aware, and we'll, unless there's any objection, I'll go ahead and call a public hearing to be at 7:05 at the next council meeting. Currently, our electronic billboards, if I can phrase it that way, are mandated that they rotate no greater than 15 seconds per face, if I'm not mistaken. And that what this legislation does is to reduce that from 15 seconds to 5 seconds in terms of the frequency of rotation. Now, of course, the owner could do it greater than 5 seconds, but I think, that's what our legislation currently restricts it to no more rotations, not any greater than once every 15 seconds, and this legislation would reduce that to 5 seconds. So those in the community that are interested in this issue, then based on what I had learned from Alderman Gaines and certainly concurrence for Alderman Baggett, we'll have a public hearing with regard to this at the next council meeting, and then obviously go forward based on what these two council members' requests are. With that, Ms. Marshall?
00912, Alderman Gaines and Baggett.
Same thing on that.
I know that, so would you go ahead and read that, Ms. Marshall? And then, did you say that you thought that Alderman Gaines wanted a public hearing on this also, or is this somewhat different? I didn't get the same message from him. So with that, could you read it once, Ms. Marshall, and then we'll hold it?
This is an ordinance granting a conditional use to allow a self-service ice machine in a C3 zone for certain real property located at 3621 Camp Robinson Road in the city of North Little Rock, Arkansas. First reading.
Now, I understand, is there a Mr. Bill Loper present? Looper, I'm sorry. Mr. Looper, in order to take advantage of you being here, of course, I'm not sure what the emergency was that Mr. Gaines had, but I know that I did visit briefly with him, and I know that he was very interested in this legislation, and so I'm sure that there was some emergency that called him away. And so what we've done is gone ahead and held that to the next council meeting. If you care to make any comments, I'll be happy to offer the microphone to you at this point. If not, then we'll be considering it at the next council meeting.
Well, it's a, as you stated, a self-service ice machine, and I feel like I can make really good use of the property there by putting that in with my shaved ice business that I've had there now. This is my 22nd year in business, and I've been trying to figure out a way to utilize that space, and this is just like a 6-foot wide by 12-foot ice machine structure. We're going to put it together and make it look like one structure. I'm going to pave everything, really make the place look really nice, and landscaping. And so I was hoping for everyone's consideration on this. I'll also be able to sell it to the citizens and save them money close to half price.
One of the things I want to certainly tell you, I appreciate the shaved ice. I have two granddaughters that regularly attend and help support your business, and I understand you're going to be moving that back some and then improving the entrance and the flow of traffic.
Yes, sir.
And I would encourage you, because I know that there is some concern about the aesthetics. I had been given the impression that it was a trailer, and I know I saw a picture of something that you intend to do that looked somewhat different than what my mental anticipation was, and so I would encourage you in the interim to share with council members what your intent is, and maybe even by way of some type of an exhibit that you might want to attach to the legislation.
That'd be good. I'm glad to do that.
Okay. Alderman Baggett.
By holding this, Mr. Looper, with Alderman Gaines' help, I think that would be to your advantage.
And that's fine with me.
Alderwoman
Was this, and I know it's been held, but didn't we look at this last year?
In a different location.
At a different location, but we looked at this.
I think we looked at one in your area, didn't we? Down close to...
Well, we're not going to have one in Rose City, but okay,
That wasn't
just
me,
asking.
that was someone else.
Okay, just asking.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
I'm just answering your question.
Thank you. Thanks.
Ms. Marshall, it looks like that
That's all your
completes the agenda. Is there anyone that signed a comment, public comment?
Yes, we have Bobby Taylor, Sean Archer, and James Ard.
Okay.
Before we go to
But
public,
before we go to public comment, I was just going to see if anybody had signed up. Does any council member have any comment?
I had the privilege of sitting next to Alderman Baggett at the Hall of Fame, Senior Citizen Hall of Fame luncheon the other day, and he brought up a subject that I had received a phone call from Wayne Rathman, who is the regional manager now for Waste Management, and Wayne had indicated to me that he, in recent weeks, has losing several of his customers that they were serving the Dipsy dumpsters at those locations at Waste. And Wayne didn't really ask me to bring up, can we discuss the Dipsy dumpster ordinance, but Alderman Baggett indicated evidently he'd been getting several phone calls from business owners down in the Levy area, and I was just wondering if maybe at the next council meeting, and I know that Mr. Carter and his office has probably been working on this issue, and there's been some publicity in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette about it, but I was wondering if maybe at the next council meeting, I realize it's not on the agenda tonight, if we could discuss the ramifications of that ordinance that the business owners here in North Little Rock are having to endure in these tough economic times.
And I know that's Alderman Gaines' legislation last year, and let me, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I had a meeting on that this afternoon with Bill Brown of the City Attorney's Office, and let me suggest to you, where we find ourselves and what recommendation grew out of that meeting. First of all, in talking to planning, we learned that of the legislation that was adopted by the council, sponsored by Alderman Gaines, that roughly 100 to 125 of our businesses have already complied with that. So, it certainly was felt that, and I know we've heard from several of those businesses with regard to what our intent is to do about further enforcement of that. We also learned that there are a number of the businesses out there who have not complied, probably a lot more who have not complied than have complied. And the recommendation that we're going to make and ask Mr. Brown out of the City Attorney's Office to prepare the legislation is that we will ask the council to approve a moratorium on issuing any citations until the 1st of July of this year. That during that time we will have the administrative officer, which has been acting out of our planning department, Mr. Voiles has been undertaking that chore through his office, will undertake to identify every non-complying remaining non-complying dumpsters in the city. Now, recalling that there are industrial areas that this does not comply to industrial areas, that Mr. Voiles or his office or someone that's designated will, in writing, let the parties know what they feel the minimal steps that need to be taken in order to, and we're going to ask the City Attorney's Office to instill or insert the word substantial compliance, which means that every dot won't have to be, every I won't have to be dotted, every T won't have to be crossed. That before July 1st, that everyone who's found not to be compliant, that will have the opportunity to respond to that writing and indicate in that writing what their plans are in order to come into compliance within 12 months from July 1st of 2009, which essentially will give the parties, by and large, a year and 4 months, 5 months, whatever that ends up being, to come into compliance in accordance with whatever their written plan would be in responding to that. Now, obviously, the council can, certainly do whatever it wants, but I know at least as a result of that meeting that was felt that might be a reasonable way to approach trying to both give some enhanced flexibility to try to recognize the significant mandate that may be being placed on some of our businesses, and yet recognizing that the letter of the legislation by and large looks to screening, and so, you know, while there may be some that feel like a substantial screening, you know, wall may be needed, you know, I would think that someone in a year to year and a half would have the ability, if they wanted to build some, not makeshift, but certainly a reasonable screening fence or something that could comply with the opaque nature of the legislation, would be able to do that in that time period. But again, then, you know, that's just a recommendation that we would put before the council, and don't claim any overall guidance in that pathway, other than just what seems to maybe be a reasonable approach, particularly in light of the fact that we have somewhere between 100 and 125 of our businesses who have already complied.
Mayor, that leaves open then the possibility of meeting in the middle somewhere down the road on this.
A consensus of the council is what we're trying to achieve.
Right, and the schools fall under this.
And we do, the city does.
Schools and the city falls under this. I understand that we, as the owner of some of those dumpsters, have not complied with that ourselves. The other thing that Mr. Rathman told me is that some of the businesses that have told them to pick up their dumpsters are now relying upon the city to pick up their trash. Is that possible, and do we charge those businesses a fee to service?
Well, the answer is it's possible. We do provide roughly, I think Mr. Ford indicated to us in our meeting, who was present at that point, that we have roughly 600 commercial customers. We haven't had our rate structure reviewed in years, we'll say, in terms of that, and so, you know, I have asked him to work with the city finance office to take a review of the commercial customer rate structure that we have, you know, to ensure that if we do continue to, you know, potentially add customers to that we do so at a rate that would at least break us even in terms of the cost that we are undertaking. You know, if we hadn't had any rate review of that structure in years, then I think that needs to be done, particularly in light of the fact that, you know, what this may do is generate some additional business, and we certainly don't mind, you know, obviously continuing that, but that also, Alderman Heights, you're correct, needs to be reviewed in the light of moving forward on this issue.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Robinson.
I just want to make a comment about the dumpster situation. To me, to allow those businesses another year to get their dumpsters enclosed is just simply not fair to the ones who had to make the sacrifice, and many of them made sacrifices, financial sacrifices, that come into compliance. And that's my comment. I just don't think it's fair to those folks. I know that, you know, we have to work out some provisions and all, but to me, you know, still, it's just not fair.
Well, I don't think, I certainly, and I'm going to accept a lot of the blame on this. You know, this was not our legislation, and yet, you know, we should have become much more sensitive to the overall impact that it would have on the business community, and perhaps earlier than today, you know, made some suggestions about compliance. And I certainly don't disagree, Alderwoman Robinson, with what you said. The realities of where we are with the large number of people who haven't come into compliance, you know, almost mandates a similar reaction to what we're seeing with the federal government when, you know, all those banks didn't follow the right rules. And the size or magnitude of the problem, you know, obviously necessitates perhaps a comprehensive review and approach. And you know, while the one that we're throwing out for consideration may not be the best one, this council certainly has the ability to determine you know, what they feel would be in the best interest of this city and this business community as we try to seek compliance with this. You know, if we sent out issued 1,000 citations, the judge, may have more sympathy with the business folks than with us, and so, the recognition of the tremendous administrative, undertaking that was associated with this legislation obviously was not realized by us at the time we began. So again, I'm certainly going to underline our complicity in where we find ourselves now.
Okay.
Alderwoman Ross?
I know when we discussed this, that we knew at the time that there were going to be exceptions. The Landlords Association was here, Sue Corker's here, she has an apartment complex. We don't want those 50 trash cans out on the street. In the area, one of her areas, there's no way to screen it. And we knew that there were going to be exceptions, and that's why we gave them a year to contact us about the exceptions and everything. So I don't know, I don't understand. You can plant trees, it doesn't have to be an $800,000 enclosure.
Well, and I don't
shrub.
disagree with you. I guess the only thing that obviously is concerning is the large number of people who chose to ignore that, and we find ourselves in that point now. If after review and decision by the council, that decision is to go forward and start issuing citations, then we will. But at this point, I wanted to make sure that we, came up with some recommendation. I think I told the council that we would do that, by this council meeting, and that's what we intend to put on the table. But we certainly intend to abide by and make our best efforts to enforce what this council says. We didn't anticipate the magnitude of the problem, and we'll just do the best that we can after we review and make a renewed effort to try to, make some decisions in light of the facts where we find ourselves. Alderman Baggett?
Yeah, Mayor, when we sent this down from the Planning Commission, we didn't intend for this to be that strict when we sent it down. And I disagree with the alderwoman from Ward 2 that when you've made a mistake, when you've done something, you don't just continue to go down that road. There was a lot of dumpsters that were out of compliance, parked in public right-of-ways, and some that were really filthy and really in bad shape. But I personally think it should have been dealt with on a case-by-case basis and not a complete deal. We've got people over in Ward 3 that are spending thousands of dollars to come in compliance with this, and something needs to be done.
Well, and that's why that I wanted to, in our suggestions in terms of the meeting that we had today, that, Mr. Voiles, with a great deal of understanding about the different approaches that could be taken in screening, come up with a written recommendation based on both economy and compliance in terms of what the intent of the ordinance is, and that's to keep it, keep that, that dumpster activity visually restricted from the vast majority of the people who, would pass by.
I agree with Alderman Baggett in that, if we do make a mistake or we do something incorrect here on council, that we'd certainly have an opportunity to correct ourselves and go forward. The one fact that I want to give you is what I've heard is that in the Levy area alone, your ward, there are over 200 dumpster locations that are non-compliant at this point tonight, and that it would take in excess of $1,200,000 to bring them all in compliance. That's the numbers that I've heard.
Well,
that's a lot of money in these tough economic times.
Well, let me see if I can, Mr. Wadley, if you're over there, come in this direction. But basically, what I understood Mr. Wadley told me today, and he was a part of that meeting. We had, most everyone that had 2 cents that was worthwhile to throw in, is that there were somewhere in the neighborhood of 250, I believe, in Ward 3 that were non-compliant. And that if you multiplied that by 4, then you'd come up with 1,000. Now, I don't know that every ward would necessarily be reflective of that. I know there are a large number of, come on, Mr. Wadley, to the microphone, there are a large number of small businesses in Ward 3, perhaps even a disproportionate amount than there might be in Ward 4 in terms of small businesses. So I don't know, as we talked today, that I would necessarily multiply 250 times 4, and not being in compliance, somewhat less than that. And I think you guesstimated that it cost $1,250 per.
The bids that we're getting are around $1,800.
Or $1,800. So if you multiply that by 1,000, I think that's where you came up with your, well in excess of $1 million. But I think most of us feel that, that there are a lot more economical ways to accomplish, that in terms of screening on one side or two sides, and that's one of the reasons that we were going to work with the businesses in trying to come up with a minimal plan that would, in a maximum way address most of what we felt the intent of the ordinance was, and to do that in writing, and then give someone a length of time to be able to, submit a written, written plan as to how they were going to achieve it, and then give them a certain amount of time to do that. Now, again, the council obviously can agree or disagree, and then we're going to do the best we can to enforce what we found to be a much more significant problem than I know I realized when we first adopted this legislation, and gave people till the 1st of January to come into compliance, and then found what we believe to be a significant number of people that did not do that. Now, after review and discussion and decision, whatever this council does, we'll do the best we can to fulfill it. Mr. Wadley, you got any other comments?
No, basically that's it.
This was in public comment. You're right, there's nothing on the agenda, but I appreciate, Alderman, you reminded me, because I intended to bring that report to y'all, and would have neglected to do it if you hadn't pointed that out. And I think all the comments are appropriate. Any other council member have a comment? Microphone's open. The three that have indicated they want to speak. Mr. Taylor.
Good evening, council members, mayor. My name is Bobby Taylor. I've been sitting out there listening to y'all. A mistake, we all make mistakes, but a mistake is not a mistake till someone brings it to your attention and then there's nothing done about it. That's when it's a problem. And I've seen y'all many times pass these special use permits, and there's nobody to follow up on them. And they can just about got to where they're not worried about y'all. They can do just about anything you want to, and I can name you 3 or 4 of them right now, but only way I'll do it is personally. And we got problems out there that we've had. This didn't just happen overnight. If there's not something done about it, and it's in code, and if there's not something done about it, it ain't gonna get no better, it's gonna get worse, because there's nothing being done about it. These problems have been going on for a good while. The small ones, there's been something done about them, but the ones that's going to get a little backlash or a little lip or a little bit of controversy over it, there's nothing even done about them yet. And I know there's some of them that's been going on for over 3 years, and I can take you and point them out to you. But now that's my question, is if, Mayor, have you, 2 weeks ago I asked you if there's anything that had come up with code yet, and that's my question tonight. Have you got anything working for code for Old City to help clean it up?
Mr. Taylor, I hadn't had a chance to do any more work on what you asked me last time, and we'll see if we can address that in the near future.
Okay, I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, look forward to it, Mr. Taylor. You bet. Next.
Sean Archer.
Mayor, Council, I just want to use this time right now to announce that the Lakewood Neighborhood Group meeting is moving from Lakewood Elementary to Lakewood United Methodist next door. It'll be the 3rd Thursday of every month at 7 p.m.
We look forward to encouraging folks, particularly in that neighborhood, as well as visitors, to attend. And we appreciate you letting us know. The Office of Neighborhood Services, I'm sure, will be happy to try to distribute that information as broadly as possible, and we appreciate our neighborhood organizations, and thanks for hanging with us to share that with us. Alderwoman Ross?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if we mentioned this or not, but Sean and his wife Celeste have taken over the Lakewood Neighborhood Group, and they replaced Mrs. White, so we'd like to have everybody come out to that meeting.
Don't think there was an official
And so
announcement.
you want to repeat that one more time for those of us that missed it the first time?
The announcement is that the Lakewood Neighborhood Group meeting has moved from from Lakewood Elementary to Lakewood United Methodist, third Thursday of every month at 7 p.m.
And I'm sure for all those that know, that's just about almost a stone's throw east is where the church is. So
I
it's
could probably
not-
break a window with a baseball from the elementary school to the...
I've got one granddaughter that goes to Lakewood Elementary and another granddaughter that goes to Mother's Day Out at Lakewood United Methodist. So both those buildings are very important, and you know, we appreciate the church and its hospitality, and certainly thank our school district for its.
Thank you, thank you. And by the way, the Neighborhood Services Group has been very helpful, very responsive.
And we thank y'all for y'all's involvement.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is still James Ard. First, I want to thank Mr. Gaines for not voting for himself tonight as a council member did when he was getting on the committee. By the way, there's those gentlemen, there's Galaxy next door has some $50 and $60 shirts on for $10. You might want to go for a look before you go home or come back down. I originally wasn't going to say but one thing, Mary. Did they say anything to you about what I wanted to do tonight? Yes or no?
I've heard Mr. Ard, and we're not going to permit any artificial or public comment is exactly that, and unless directed otherwise by the council, you know, audio visual or recordings or things along those nature that are not going to be authorized by the chair.
But I can talk about it, is that correct?
Your public comment is public comment, Mr. Ard.
Okay. First, I want to talk about the dumpsters, since they were brought up. And I know none of y'all is going to answer this question. Chief Bradley won't answer it, but I'm going to ask it. Why hasn't the city done anything about the dumpster at the city hall where you had to go down and pay your bills? I went by tonight to be sure I would tell this correct, and we have a city legislation by a woman up there that they had to be closed. Am I not correct? And
Mr. Ard, I assure you that the city will be in compliance once this council makes its final decision.
well, that's not the problem. They wasn't in compliance with tonight. They have it open, you know, and we have an ordinance that says has to be closed, but it's open 90% of the time.
Mr. Ard, I will say this about that I'm not a dumpster policeman, so unless somebody tells me it, I don't know.
This is about the 5th time I mentioned it to code, and the 2nd time I've said something up here.
Thank you, Mr. Ard, we appreciate it.
Okay? I called in a complaint about noise on Sunday, which you are aware of, Mayor, and Chief behind me is aware of. Rick Ezell is aware of. I talked to him today. I was told I had to have a dB meter before I can call in complaints. I went out, purchased another one to try to be in compliance. I don't think it's right for our citizens to have to furnish their own decibel meter to report loud noises. You do not cover the ice cream trucks, and it's very annoying when they come bopping down the street and you hear them 4 or 5 blocks away. But I'd like to know why we had to purchase our own dB meters.
Mr. Hart, I'll be happy to visit with you about that later. There's no requirement to purchase dB meters, but it is a requirement that in order for a police officer to be able to issue any kind of citation, you know, that they either have to have a sworn complaint by a citizen or, and I think the city attorney's office is willing to visit on that issue, or secondarily to be able to themselves witness the loud noise. I am not aware of anywhere, you know, that there's any requirement to buy any kind of a meter in order for us to enforce that ordinance.
It seems the dispatcher says you have to have a dB meter. I've got it on tape, and so does the officer. I wanted to know if I had a dB meter before he wanted to respond. And that was the only thing I was really going to talk about tonight. These others just kind of happened up. So Appreciate it, and now you're telling me, somebody's telling me I don't have to have a DV meter.
Unless Mr. City Attorney tells me that's in the legislation, I don't believe it is. We got almost 900 people that work for us, and I will say that some of them, perhaps need some education, and we'll undertake to do that.
That's a big amen. Have a good evening.
You too. Is there a motion?
So moved.
On the motion.
Ross, White, Taylor.
Yes.
Robinson. Baggett. Height, and Richards.
Yes.
Charlie,